Good evening, everyone. My name is Clive Saunders, if you've not met me before, and I'm the chair of the Watford African Caribbean Association. Uh, Thank you for joining us for tonight's session, the third of our substantive Black History Month sessions this month. You might have heard we had a focus on diabetes. We also had a focus on mental health, and a recording for those activities are already on our YouTube channel. We will be sharing the link to that for you later on. However, I am not actually hosting this session, you'll be pleased to hear. So I'm actually just going to hand over to your host for tonight, one of our directors, Ms. Zora Johnson. So Zora, welcome over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Clive. Well, welcome everybody to what I hope will be a really insightful evening of information, feedback and questions from yourselves. We have been joined by Tracy Hughes, who's one of the community outreach members from the Stroke Association, which coincidentally there is a media campaign highlighting everyone to the risks and adversities and the challenges around stroke at the moment. So whether or not you see it on the TV or hear it on the radio, there's quite a wide-reaching campaign going on. So Tracy's going to take us through a set of slides. If you would kindly hold fire with questions or put them in the chat, and then we can deal with them after Tracy's presentation. But yes, we really look forward to supporting this event on behalf of the Stroke Association. So thank you, Tracy. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for inviting me into your space tonight to talk about stroke. I hope I cover all the things that you might need to know or want to know. But as Zora said, if you have any questions, please ask me at the end. I'm just going to, if you just give me a second, I'm just going to share my presentation. Hold on just 1 second. I'm sorry about this. Bear with me, please. Yeah, I just can't seem to go backwards on this. I've got stuck, so I'm going to stop sharing. Just bear with me.
Wonderful. And while you're doing that, just to say, for those of you who are in the live chat, I've put the link to the actually it's missed half a bit, so I'm going to add that again, the link to the WACA YouTube channel where this video will also be uploaded. It's now in the chat, but I'll do it again because I can see it's missed the end off.
Okay, right, I've got it sorted out now. Okay, I think I'm there. I hope you can all see that. Somebody give me a thumbs up.
Yes, we can.
Fabulous, Clive. Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. As Zora said, I'm Tracy Hughes. I'm an engagement officer for the Stroke Association, and what I'll be presenting tonight is some information that will hopefully increase your awareness about stroke. Just a little bit of housekeeping to start with. I think Zora mentioned this. If you wouldn't mind keeping your yourself on mute while I'm speaking, that would be lovely. But if any of you do want to ask questions, we're going to do that at the end or in the chat bar. And it'll probably take about 30 to 40 minutes for me to present to you tonight. So I thought I'd start with what the Stroke Association does. What do we do? So just to give you a little bit of context of why I'm here, we are a national charity. We are the only charity in the UK that supports people who've had a stroke, that fund critical research into stroke, and campaign to make sure that people get the best stroke support and care that they can. We do also, as I'm doing tonight, a lot of raising awareness about what stroke is. And I wanted to surprise you with this, but Zora actually has already told you. There is a campaign at the moment, which is called Finding Stroke Through Support. And I thought I'd show you this in case any of you haven't seen it yet. So here goes, and I'm hoping you can hear it too. Let me know if you can't.
Mummy won't be able to speak. She might not say hello.
Okay. They've said that he's paralysed on one side and the stroke's done something to his sight. Hello, sweetheart. It's Mummy. Hi, Mummy.
At the moment, he can only move his eyes, but he can hear you.
Every day, 240 people wake up to the life-changing impact of a stroke.
We're going to get through this.
We're the Stroke Association, and we're here with stroke support for every survivor and their loved ones, for as long as it takes.
Mummy won't be able to speak.
Of this, but it's not letting me move on for some reason. That's it. Okay, so I thought I'd start off by just letting you know what I do for the Stroke Association. So my role is called an engagement officer, and it doesn't really explain what I do, but hopefully this slide will show you. I fall into the category that helps to improve people's lives after stroke, and on the left-hand side there is just some ideas around what that really looks like for my role. So it's about developing community support groups that help people after a stroke. It's about accessible activities for people that are inclusive and takes into account their new abilities or disabilities. I do a lot of raising awareness of stroke as well, because it's important for us to know what it is and how to behave. I recruit and work with volunteers who help me do the work that I do. The reason I do that is because I'm one of two people who cover the whole of the east of England. So my remit covers Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, Essex and Milton Keynes, which is quite a big area to cover when it's one person. So we recruit and work with volunteers called community connectors that help us with this work. And we also look to improve what we call system partnerships. And what that means is that we build relationships with the NHS and with the social care systems that help to bridge the gap for people post-discharge from NHS care and while they're waiting to be supported by the social care system. On the right-hand side of that slide, there are just some examples that I'm just going to quickly whiz through about what that kind of work looks like. So across Hertfordshire, there are a lot of stroke support groups. There are 12 of them in different locations across Hertfordshire, and I support all of those. In total, I have about 26 across all of my areas. So that's quite a lot to visit in a month or a year. Some of the projects that I'm involved with at the moment are very varied. This is only really a snapshot of them. We are working with a care home organisation called Care UK at the moment. They're helping us to set up new stroke groups, particularly in rural areas where we don't have any. So that's a really big piece of work for the whole of the east of England at the moment. I'm doing some work with another charity called the Golf Trust to look at accessibility for golf for people that have physical disability, and that's going to be looking at all areas across where I work. I'm currently doing a big project with another charity called Be Active Bedfordshire at the moment, and they are part of Sport England, to provide exercise sessions in all of the leisure centres across Bedfordshire. I'm working with a volunteer who actually works at John Henry Newman in Stevenage at the moment, and we are looking at a way of delivering the fast message and just a light touch stroke message into high schools and colleges, so that younger people have that knowledge of stroke and the fast message before they leave school. Some of our volunteers, some of our connectors, are going into our hospitals to share information about what we do as a charity, so that when people leave hospital, they know how we can support them. And I'm also doing a big project with Herts County Council at the moment, who are developing what's called a physical disability strategy. And I've joined that board to make sure that stroke survivors have a voice in terms of how that is shaped. That's not extensive, that's just some of what I've been doing, but it's important for you to understand that I am not a medical professional and I'm not a research specialist. I'm just somebody who works very tirelessly in communities to raise awareness and improve lives of people that have had a stroke. So this is what I hope to cover a little bit of tonight. So what is a stroke and how to react to one? What the impact of a stroke can be, how we can help ourselves to avoid a stroke, and where to find support. So just a little bit of context around what stroke looks like in the UK today. So there are more than 100,000 strokes in the UK every year, and over 1.2 million people who are living with the effects of a stroke. 2/3 of people that leave acute care will leave with some kind of disability, and I'll come on to talk about what those kind of effects are. So just to yourselves for a moment, we've got 3 people on this slide. I wonder if you can just think about this yourself. How many people of those on that slide that you think may have had a stroke? There's certainly one that I would have said no to before I started working for the Stroke Association. I am going to give you the answer. I'm not going to leave you hanging. Any of you that said all 3 would be correct. And here they are talking about their experience.
So I was in work, it was a Friday.
It was my 7th birthday party.
There's something not right and I start to panic.
My mind was not coming together.
I can't move my right hand side.
Massive sharp pain.
Explosion.
My brain fell out.
Thought I would die.
My body drained. And then I disappeared.
I woke up and everything was spinning.
The light was like needles.
Your life is in a trap.
Over time, it's getting better.
Hopefully some of these fingers might work again.
Every day is a challenge.
You need that extra support to get you through.
I am Baz.
I'm Paul.
I'm Luna. I'm a stroke survivor.
I am a stroke survivor.
I'm Alicia, and I'm a stroke survivor.
Yeah, this doesn't like it when I'm.
So I was in work, it was a Friday.
Let's stop that again. I'm very sorry about this. It doesn't seem to want to move over from my video.
Explosion.
My brain fell.
If anyone's got any top tips, please do let me know.
Thought I would die.
My body drained. And then
I think you might
see
just
if I can do this. It's all right. I've got it. Thank you. Thanks, Clive. So, what is a stroke? So basically, a stroke is where the blood supply to the brain is interrupted either by a blockage or a bleed. That interruption causes damage to the brain for as long as it is allowed to continue. And we have three ways of looking at a stroke. There is either what is called an ischemic stroke, which is a blockage of a blood vessel to the brain, or there is a hemorrhagic stroke, which is a bleed on the brain. You will see from that, from this slide here, that an ischemic stroke is far more popular than a bleed, but it is both about the damage that is caused, and the longer that the blockage or the bleed is there for in the brain, the bigger the damaged area will be. If I just show you this, it's a bit of a cartoon of what happens. There is also something called a TIA, which is also known in medical terms as a transient ischemic attack, or we know it better as a mini stroke. And that basically is an ischemic stroke, a blockage, but it's a small blockage and it's one that will pass quite quickly. So you may have a few odd symptoms that you can't explain, but it will move and it will pass on its own. It still will cause an amount of damage, and I'm going to go on to talk about what that looks like in a second and what the symptoms might be. Firstly, though, I want to talk to you about the FAST test. For any of you that are my age, you will probably remember an advert on the TV a very long time ago. It was actually in 2009, and which just raised awareness of what a stroke looked like and how to react to a stroke. What's really key is that the quicker that medications or interventions can be put in place for somebody who's had a stroke, the better the outcomes are going to be. That window of opportunity is around 4 hours. So it's really, really key that we get people the right treatment that they need. And that may be clot-busting drugs. It may be drugs that help to reduce the bleed in the brain. But all of these things need to be done quite quickly. The longer that is happening in the brain for, the bigger the area of damage will be and the bigger the effects of the stroke will be. So I don't know if any of you remember what the acronym FAST stands for, but what I thought I'd do is just share a newer version of an advert, just so that you can it's always a good reminder, even if you remember the original.
So how's the new job going?
Absolutely fantastic. Closer to home, so I get to spend more time with Shamila and the kids.
You worked hard for it though, mate.
Well, no.
Are you alright? Is he alright?
Steve? I think he's having a stroke. We need to do the FAST test. What? How? Wait a minute. Steve, what's wrong?
Steve could be having a stroke. It's time to do the FAST test.
F face. His face has fallen on one side. Steve, can you smile for me?
F, face. Look at the person's face and ask them to smile. Has their face fallen on one side?
A, arms. Can you raise your arms for me?
A, arms. Ask the person to raise both arms and keep them there. Are they unable to raise one arm?
He can't raise his other arm. S, speech. Can you say hello and tell me your name?
S, speech. Ask the person to say hello and tell you their name. Is their speech slurred?
Hello, T time.
T, Time. Steve is having a stroke. It's time to call 999.
Ambulance, please.
It's gonna be all right, mate.
Steve has shown all 3 of the fast symptoms, but even one of these symptoms could mean someone is having a stroke. If you suspect a stroke, do the fast test and always call 999 straight away if you see any one of these signs. Learn it. Share it. You could save a life.
So hopefully that will have sparked some memories with some of you about the original campaign and the original advert that came out, which was a collaboration between the NHS and the Stroke Association. As I said, it was a long time ago now. And what concerns me is that my children are in their early 20s, and if I hadn't worked for the Stroke Association, they wouldn't really be aware of this message. And it is so, and I can't stress enough how really key it is, how the speed of this is really key in order to reduce the symptoms and effects of a stroke and to get the treatment that you need. So the acronym's there. We're obviously the new campaign doesn't include the fast message that I showed you the advert of at the beginning, so we're working quite hard, which is why we're doing some of the schools project work that I spoke about to try and share this message wider. There are other symptoms of a stroke, and these might be more obvious where people might be having what is called a TIA or a mini stroke. Excuse me. Because these things can come and go and pass quite quickly. And they're also things that, from speaking to people that have had TIAs, they're things that people have ignored and just thought it was just something that happened, and they don't need to worry about it. If there are a combination of these signs and it's really making you dysfunctional, but it's not ticking all of the FAST acronym boxes, then we still recommend that you get yourself to A&E or someone to take you, or you call 999 straight away. If it's just a transient kind of effect that kind of comes and goes, it's still really important to seek medical advice. We always say to people, you know yourselves, and if something just is odd or unexplainable, you still need to really seek some medical advice, because there may be underlying reasons why this has happened. You would need to know, because you may need treatments that will help to further reduce your risk of having a stroke. But having a TIA doesn't always mean that you'll go on to have a full stroke, but if you ignore any signs and symptoms, you are more likely to. So please, if you think anything's odd, please do seek medical advice. So how about the impact of a stroke? So most people, if they're asked to explain what a stroke looks like, will normally tell us about what they understand about the physical effects. So that's, everyone normally speaks to a one-side paralysis, because that's what we generally know about stroke. But there are lots more things that can be an effect of stroke, and some people do have multiple effects. Some people will have paralysis. Some people may also have a communication problem, which is called aphasia, which has been previously highlighted by Bruce Willis in the press. Some people will have emotional changes, which is called emotionalism. So it's people that can't control their emotions and that will laugh when things aren't happy and cry when things aren't sad. There'll be changes in behaviour. So sometimes that can come through the major trauma that is caused by having a stroke, which is an acquired brain injury of sorts. And some people will have problems with memory and thinking as well. As I said, people can have a whole combination of these things. this kind of helps to visualize a little bit more about the physical effects of stroke and how it kind of just can take hold of you in lots of different ways. But it's important to note that a lot of these things are what we call hidden disabilities. One of the biggest things that stroke survivors say to us that don't have an obvious disability is that they get fed up with people saying that they look okay when actually they're not, because there could be any number of things that are an after effect of a stroke that causes distress and discomfort from day to day. The positive thing is that our brain is very clever, and what our brain can do, a bit like a traffic jam, is it can what we call rewire. So with enough repetition and therapy with certain aspects of the stroke, those pathways that have been blocked and damaged can be rewired, and your brain can find a different route through. A bit like if we were stuck in a traffic jam and we were thinking, right, okay, this is blocked here, I can't get through, so let me try a different road. That's called, in clinical terms, neuroplasticity. Just means that if you do repetitive actions for long enough, your brain starts to wake up to what its functions were before, and it finds a new route around the damaged area of your brain. So, stroke risk factors. So what are the main risk factors for stroke? Age, we still know that 70% of stroke survivors tend to be older, and this will be because as we get older, our arteries harden, and it makes it harder for our blood to flow around our body and through our vessels. So we know that 70% of stroke survivors will be usually over 65. However, that split, 70-30 split, is changing, and we are seeing a lot of younger stroke survivors in what we would call working age, which is 25 to 65. What's key in that infographic there is that a lot of stroke survivors don't realise their risk until they actually have a stroke. So what are the risks? There are health conditions that put us at a higher risk of having a stroke, which are listed there. For those of you who aren't familiar with atrial fibrillation or AF, that is an irregular heartbeat. And some of these things, or a lot of these things, can go undetected as a risk until they're at quite a high level. So that's why we really encourage health checks, particularly with blood pressure and cholesterol. When we are educated and when we have knowledge of what these health conditions are, then we can medicate them, we can monitor them, and we can reduce that risk fairly easily. So it's really important that we understand if we do have any health conditions that would affect whether we have a stroke or not. There are also lifestyle choices that we make that can add to risk. They are listed here. We're very realistic about the message that we give about this, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people to moderate everything they do rather than give up everything. If you know that you do all of those things on that list, then you are at much higher risk of having a stroke. However, if you have one vice and you can reduce it, perfect. But why is that so key for this audience? I was asked to produce some statistics for you, which I found from a government report actually that came out in 2021. I've put that on the slide there so that you can have a look at that yourself if you want to know more and learn more about the report. But you will see there that what the report has stated and suggested is that certain ethnic groups will tend to have higher blood pressure, which will need monitoring and managing. One of the lowest groups of treated high blood pressure groups are Black Africans. Prevalence for stroke is 3 to 6 times higher for type 2 diabetes in South Asian and Black ethnic groups. And Black adults have a higher risk of obesity. I can't answer to any of the reasons why this is, but we have this knowledge. It has been reported on, and it does talk a lot about blood pressure and diabetes. So it's really important that we look at those what we call modifiable risk factors and lifestyle choices that can help to reduce high blood pressure and to reduce the probability of diabetes, and also to eat a healthy balanced diet to reduce obesity. So what can I do to reduce my risk? Aging is what we call an unmodifiable factor. We are all going to age, but if we live our life reducing some of our risks of some of those health factors, then we're much less likely to have a stroke. So that could mean cutting down or stopping smoking. It could mean eating less salt, sugar and fat. It could be being as active as you can, trying to stay a healthy weight and drinking less alcohol. So a little bit more about what we do, particularly about what the local service support looks like for people who live in Hertfordshire. So I spoke a little bit at the beginning about what we do. We also do lots of fundraising, and we have support services who are commissioned throughout the UK to support individual stroke survivors and their families. Now in Hertfordshire, we have five people across Hertfordshire. That's the most in any county across the east of England. To put that in some perspective, the whole of Suffolk has 1 person, and Milton Keynes has none. Bedfordshire has 4. Essex has 2. Our support services are commissioned through funding that we get usually from the county councils, and basically we can never get enough, but we try hard all the time to make sure that our services are there to support people when they are discharged after a stroke. We also have lots of information on our website. This is what it looks like. Anything and everything that you could ever want to know about stroke or support for stroke is on our website. My best top tip for using this, though, because there is so much information on it, is use the search box and put something in there. If you want to know about driving after stroke or vision or just anything in particular, support services, just use the search engine and it will take you to all of the documents that are available to help you. We have a stroke helpline that operates from 9 till 6 daily and operates Monday to Friday, half day on Saturday, and has an out of hours number also for you to contact if you ever need to talk to anyone about stroke. And I would stress that this is for people that have been affected by stroke rather than I just want to learn more. So, but yeah, it's there and it's available as a national offer to anyone and everyone who's affected by stroke. We also have a Here For You telephone service, and what this does is you would register to use it, and when you register, you then have somebody rings you once a week for 8 weeks, just to help support you through those early days after a stroke. You would just tell in the registration document, you would just tell a little bit about yourself, and if you have any hobbies and interests. And the service tries to match you up with somebody in a similar situation who has similar interests. That way, if you want to talk about your stroke, you can, but if you don't and you want to talk about your common interests, you can talk about that too. And these informal chats last for about 8 weeks, and they're all volunteers with lived experience that actually make the phone calls. So we do recruit volunteers into the service, and they find that it's really, really valuable for their journey of recovery as well. So we do have that service as national as well. This is a bit more about the Hertfordshire Stroke Recovery Service. As I said, 5 stroke support coordinators. I didn't mention that they were part-time. So they have a full-time equivalent of about 3 people. And that's what they do. They're available to talk through the emotional, the physical and the communication needs of stroke survivors, and just help to be a critical friend at a time when people most need it. At the moment, they cover, they support about 400 stroke survivors a year. But as it says there, that there is you can see the shortfall there, where about 1,500 new people in Hertfordshire have a stroke every year. So we aren't the only charity that supports stroke survivors. There are others at the end that I'll give you the details of. But we only have capacity with the amount of people and the hours that we have to support that many people. That particular service is funded by Herts County Council, and we actually take referrals from anywhere and everywhere, really. So whether that be hospitals, GP services, social prescribers, but also stroke survivors and family members can self-refer into the service. So if you haven't had a health professional support you with a referral into our service, you can do it yourself. And on each of these pages, I've just given you a website showing you where you can find that support on our website. I mentioned local support groups. There's 12 in Hertfordshire. To give you some context, there's 2 in Bedfordshire and growing, hopefully. We're working on that at the moment. There's 1 in Milton Keynes. We do rely on volunteers to set up and maintain our stroke support groups. We support them to get started, but then we hope that they will just, over time, they will embed and people will take responsibility and as their independence grows, to help the volunteers that are already supporting them. They meet in all sorts of different ways, all sorts of different locations, from cafes to church halls, community rooms, and they will all offer something slightly different. So you can pick and choose the ones that you'd like to go to. But what is really key about these groups is, and that we hear this from stroke survivors as well, is that people just want peer support. They just want to talk to people that understand what they're going through. And that's really key for recovery. And again, there's the website address there for you to find. If you're not all from Hertfordshire, there's a website address to find support groups there. So local stroke support contacts. If you wanted to contact our Heart Stroke Recovery Service, there's a hearts@stroke.org.uk. You can email us there. There are also 2 other charities that perform a similar role to us, really. There's Headway and Different Strokes. I don't know if you've heard of those. Both of them do a lot of group work with stroke survivors. Headway also helps people with acquired brain injuries, and that may be through accidents, car accidents, things like that. Different Strokes are there as performing a really good service for people who have younger strokes. Our service differs from that because we deal with individuals. Our frontline recovery service has individuals and their families as their caseloads, whereas Headway and Different Strokes do lots of group work. Something else I thought you might be interested in that I discovered last week was an organisation called CAN. That's what it stands for, Caribbean and African Health Network. And the CEO of that network came to talk to our organisation actually last week, and it was really, really interesting about the work they are doing, as it says there, to address health inequalities of Black, Caribbean and African heritage people. And they've got so many different programs that they're working on at the moment. And if you want to have a look at their website, the website address is there, and it's really interesting, and they're really groundbreaking in some of the work that they're doing and some of the policy that they're getting the government to look at around these issues. So I would recommend that if you're not aware of this network, that you do have a look at it, because it does. Obviously, the CEO came to talk to us because one of the key things that's highlighted is high blood pressure, diabetes, and the prevalence for stroke. So it's just another way of connecting with information. So I just thought I'd end by it says a story of despair and recovery, and I think it's important to end on a high. As I mentioned before, the brain is a fantastic thing. It can easily be broken, but it can be fixed again. And I just wanted to share this story with you because I think it just shows that journey from despair to recovery that I want you all to have as a little bit of a takeaway from today, because sometimes it can seem a little bit distressing to think about stroke, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that there can be some good endings.
Went to bed about 10 o'clock, fell asleep around 20 past, woke up 7 minutes later, massive excruciating pain. It was a nightmare. A few weeks later, when all my friends went to work, my girlfriend went to work, I was in a wheelchair and I decided to kill myself. I thought that there is nothing on earth that's gonna rectify this, it's gonna make this better. I slid the door open and dragged myself across the ground to the deep end of the swimming pool, which is about 1.5 meters deep, and plopped straight in. And when I actually fell in and hit the bottom and looking up with everything spinning, I said to myself, what have you done? Fortunately for me, my girlfriend came back in the afternoon. She ran straight through and she dived in and she got me out. It wasn't because of her, I'll be gone. I had to think about this, and I used to concentrate on one aspect, one movement only for weeks until I could master the movement and practice like knocking a basketball against a wall or a small ball. And I would do that for weeks, just a movement for an inch, knocking a ball only for an inch by inch by inch and inch. And then point I could go back, maybe a couple of feet, move a basketball. And I think, yes, progress. Basically from 1992, 30 years ago, I've gone from not being able to speak, not being able to see properly, completely paralyzed. I can do virtually anything now. After my stroke, there is no way now I thought ever that anyone I could fall in love with, or someone could love me and then be married or have kids or whatever. I thought, no, that's it. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to kill myself. Very good, very good, excellent. But did I just hear a mistake in there?
Nah, it's meant to be.
Sure?
It's meant to be.
Really? The Stroke Association did actually make me feel more alive, basically, instead of just alone. I knew there's someone at the end of the phone if I wanted to speak. It is possible to come back from stroke. It does take a long time. For me, it took a long time, but it is possible.
I think that my dad's got, like, I don't know, something about him that's really special, but I can't really put my finger on it. I can't really say exactly what it is. But I think, I don't know, he's just special in a way. I'd say in a way he's a superhero. I think he's really, really cool. I think he's like, he's everything that I want him to be, basically.
So I just wanted to end by just summarising how you might be able to take action on stroke. Definitely share what you've learned today with others, please, and especially the FAST test. You never know when someone's going to need to use it and when someone needs to be aware of it. Try and be aware of your own health conditions that can be controlled, in terms of blood pressure checking, cholesterol checking, health checks, which can be done through your GP and can be requested through your GP. I also know that some pharmacies also offer those services as well, BP and cholesterol checks. So please try and be aware of health conditions that you can get advice and help with. If you can eat healthier, fantastic. Salt, sugar and fat are the main things that you should consider, and there are low alternatives to all of these. There are low sugar alternatives, low salt and low fat alternatives, and if you can use those in your diet, that would be fantastic. Exercise daily if you can. The guideline is actually only a minimum of 20 minutes, and it doesn't have to be, really hard cardiovascular exercise. It can be choosing to take a walk instead of using the car. It can be choosing to use the stairs instead of taking the lift, and just doing things that you wouldn't do normally, but just making sure you do something every day. Reducing or giving up smoking and drinking alcohol. Smoking is one of the biggest things that increase the risk. It doubles the risk of stroke. If you can reduce or give up smoking, fantastic. There are lots of programs around that can help you to do that. Drinking alcohol tends to higher cholesterol, which is also a factor for increasing the risk of stroke. So any of these things, moderation is key. And the message there is start to reduce your risk of stroke today by just moderating anything that you can. It's never too late to start. And that's it. Let me stop sharing. Okay, I haven't been able to see the chat bar. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them if I can. If you want to verbally ask a question, if you could pop your camera on, that would be great. Or if anyone, I'll have a look at the chat bar now.
So if you like, I think Clive is taking a back seat. So what I can do, if you like, I can just very quickly go through. So one question, any idea what is causing younger people to have strokes? That's the first question.
Okay, so I think a lot of it is around lifestyle choices, but not only that, some of it is around we know that deprivation is becoming more and more of a problem. So we are seeing that people who are subject to, whether it's fuel poverty or food poverty or housing poverty, are more at risk of these riskier medical conditions and don't have as much choice in their lifestyle choices, and may gravitate towards things that are poorer choices in their lives. We also know that with the cost of living that's been changing drastically over the last few years, that people are working harder, they're working longer, and stress can be another impact on all of this as well. So it's not really any one thing that we think of. It's a whole combination of things. Just way of life, I think, at the moment that is causing problems with people.
Wonderful, thank you. And just following on from that, then I'm guessing, and I don't know, is there information on your website about stress management, that sort of thing, or will people have to go elsewhere to look into the mental health side?
They would. I mean, we do talk about the emotional impact of stroke, and because it's something that is really lacking in the stroke recovery system is psychological support. We talk a lot about that because as a charity we are doing most of our work around post-stroke support rather than pre. But what we would say to you is yes, seek some support, do mindfulness, do some things. And it even kind of goes back to that exercise piece as well. We know that nature and getting outside and doing a little bit of exercise is just really good for your system in lots of different ways, and that can help your mental health as well. So just finding that time and space just to chill a little is perfect. But I know that's, again, it's easy to say, isn't it? I was working at 11 o'clock last night, and I'm working tonight after starting at 8 today. So we all do what we have to do, don't we? And but then I've really rigidly tried to walk every lunchtime. So I go for about a 45-minute walk every lunchtime, which is my space, I guess.
Wonderful. And Amadou has his hand up. And while Amadou is unmuting, just a reminder to everyone that one of the Black History Month events is the walk in Cassiro Park. I will find the link and I'll put that into the chat.
Fabulous.
We would love to have, absolutely, yeah. So it's going to be wonderful. A Saturday morning walk in the park. Amadou, over to you.
Thank you, Marion. Good evening, all.
Hello.
Hi. I'm sorry, I joined the meeting slightly late. May I ask your name, please? I didn't catch your name.
Oh, Tracy.
Tracy, thank you so much for really spending time to really enhance our knowledge of this topic relating to stroke. I just have a question surrounding the risk factors you mentioned earlier on. And there's this issue about moderation, but I believe in SMART goals where something is measurable and you have a target and everything. So if somebody were to say, for example, look at stopping smoking or eating less salt, sugar, or fat, if somebody was starting from a point of where they are now, how can you feel like help them channel this in a way positive way where they can see themselves walking to a realistic target that will help them get to where they need to get to?
Okay, so I think that depends on the person's on the person as well, on the individual as well. Mm-hmm. Some, like you say, you sound a bit like me. It's kind of, with me, it's all or nothing. I'm either not eating the pot of Ben and Jerry's or I'm doing the whole thing, So, but some people find that making big drastic changes to their lifestyles and what they do is very difficult. And we would always say smoking increases risk a lot. So if you can stop smoking, that rather than just reducing, that's fine. We would just say, we can't predict whether you're going to have a stroke regardless of what you do. That's something that we can't do. But what we can do is ask you to kind of make those modifiable adjustments that will help you feel healthier anyway. And some of that will be in what you eat and what you drink and how you exercise. So I think it's hard to quantify if you do this will happen, because we can't tell you exactly that will be the case. Or that's why we don't talk about prevention. We talk about risk, because we can't tell you if you stop smoking you won't have a stroke, because we don't know that.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that answer the question? Sorry.
It answers. I think where I was coming from is actually it's how you moderate those risk factors effectively. So is there would you recommend somebody sees their dietitian, or I'm just trying to really gauge where people can get support, because it's very difficult for one to do these things if you don't have support in some cases. That's where I'm coming from, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So definitely part of that report that I looked into definitely said that Black African people do not access regular health checks. That was part of the report, and I think that's quite key. That you understand your medical conditions, you access health checks if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Some GPs are waiting for you to ask them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid,
Yeah.
but you can ask them for a health check. Equally, you can go, like I said, go to local pharmacists. Some of them will do blood pressure checks, some of them will do cholesterol checks, some of them do different things. I can't say what that looks like in your area, but I would say take the time to find out, take the time to have a bit of a health check, and that checks that will test blood pressure, blood sugar levels, cholesterol, all those things that we talked about. Atrial fibrillation, or AF, the irregular heartbeat, is something that goes very unmonitored, and people don't know. They usually know they have it. It's something that can't be necessarily tested. But some people also, sometimes that presents itself a bit like really like hot flashes almost, and kind of palpitation of heartbeat and then not. And if you're having that, then you know something's not quite right.
Okay.
And go get it checked out. I don't know what access to GPs is like where you are in your areas. And I think it can be different from GP surgery from one to the next, but I know that they are trying hard to make sure that pharmacies, have what they need to be able to help out with these tests. There's also walk-in centres. I live in Bedfordshire. There's a lot of walk-in centres that you can go to if you're feeling odd or something's not quite right. And I think in terms of diet and smoking and drinking and all of that, it's a realistic ask. If you like to drink every day, maybe drink every other day, and if you like to smoke, maybe cut it down a bit. And in terms of diet, just if you can, just cut out the full content stuff. There's something called low salt, which is a replacement for high potassium salt and high sodium salt. There's something called, I buy something called half spoon, which is a half and half sugar type of product. And you can also buy low fat light sprays and things like that to cook with. So it's just, if you can just cut out, brilliant, and replace, brilliant. But I didn't want to sit here and say, this is what you've got to do. Otherwise I sound like the diet police. And I don't want to sound like that, I'm afraid. So hopefully that answers your question. So yeah, please look. It's all about just look after yourselves, recognise any differences, and seek help.
Thank you so much.
And don't ignore. And I know men are worse at this than women as well, because they tell me that they don't like to tell people about what's wrong with them. Is that true? There's
an element of fact in that, yes.
There's no shame in getting yourself looked at. You can also, as well, if you're really interested, but I wouldn't say get obsessive about it, you can fairly cheaply order your own blood pressure testing kits.
Okay.
But you have to be careful with that, because you have to find your norm.
Okay.
If that makes sense, because
Yeah.
your normal might be higher than somebody else's normal, or lower than somebody else's normal. So you have to do it over a period of time in a measured way. So I don't want you all to rush out with a blood pressure kit and panic yourselves. So yeah, but if you want to stay in touch, I'm going to be staying in touch. If you want any advice and support around doing it yourself, then I'll be able to give that.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I appreciate
it. You're welcome.
Wonderful. Clive, did you want to, you've put quite a long question there. Did you want to, talk through that one and read through that one yourself, or do you want me to read it? Oh, there you go. There's Clive. Over to you, Clive. And you are muted at the moment. Of course, we've got to be able to say that at least once during a Zoom meeting. There you go.
Sorry, which was my question? Is that a second one?
Yes, you said you're talking about supporting people in their stroke recovery journey, etc.
So, Tracy, my question was, how do you support people in their stroke recovery journey? And to your knowledge, to what extent are these services being accessed by people of African heritage compared with a wider population?
Okay, so we that one-to-one support looks like is doing it's what we call personalized person-centered care. So it's about working with the stroke survivor and the family to find out what matters to them, and usually it's taking pretty much one or two things at a time. It can be quite overwhelming to try and solve more than that in one go. We do stay with our clients for usually up to a year, but if they have more complex needs or they still have needs after that point, then we will stay longer with them. We will help them to access, I mean, it just depends on what their individual needs are, and that may be finances and returning to golf. And if those are the two things that are really important to them, those are the things that we'll work with, and our service recovery teams and myself are all the while looking for those opportunities to make sure that people can achieve their objectives and their goals. And we will work with other people in communities as well to signpost those stroke survivors to other services. There's loads of information out there and there are loads of services, but we find one of the biggest problems is that people don't know what they don't know. And finding and sharing that information is quite key, but in a very targeted way. Because when you've had a stroke, you very often have cognitive difficulties. And if you have too much going on at the same time, it just all blends. So that's the type of service that we offer. What we would hope is by the time that those people leave our services, that they feel more empowered and more independent to carry on without us. And hopefully some of their symptoms and effects have improved so that they can move on to kind of a new norm and carry on with their life. People of African heritage do not rarely access our services, as do people of Asian heritage. That's not to say we don't try. We take referrals from different parts of the NHS pathways as they discharge people who've had a stroke. And if we can't contact people, so that's anybody and everybody who has a stroke. If we can't contact people by phone, which is what we try to do first, we do send letters. And those letters will say, we're really keen to help you. Please do get in touch. And it's at that point that we have to then wait really for somebody to get in touch with us, and if they don't, then we don't progress that support. So it's really key that we come into spaces like this, and various other things that I do in communities where we're talking about what we do, and we're talking about how people can access our support themselves, because we know that sometimes the NHS pathways are a little bit broken, and we don't get the information that we need to be able to contact everyone who has a stroke. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. I might as well just go on to my other question, or at least one of my other questions. I see Jenny has got her hand up, but I had an uncle who had his wife had a stroke, and actually she recovered sufficiently to support him when he subsequently had a stroke.
Oh, yikes! Okay.
So in a way, when I think back, she largely recovered, and so that she was able to then support him. He had a pretty serious stroke and he never really recovered from it. So my question was really, to your knowledge, to what extent do survivors make a full recovery? So it's a kind of an average situation. I don't know.
That's really, really difficult to quantify, because Baz is a perfect example of the last video that I showed of somebody, with grit, determination, perseverance, motivation, just kept going until they recovered. The psychological impact of having a stroke is different for every single person, and some people can't even see that recovery pathway, and aren't even prepared to start that journey. And therefore they won't recover. Other people like Baz will just absolutely want to do it and see the value in it. So it's really difficult to quantify how many people might. What we do know is that people who are more elderly that have a stroke, or people that have a more serious stroke, are going to be less likely to have the strength, motivation, and motivation to take that recovery journey, because it can be a long one, and it can involve a heck of a lot of repetition, for the brain to kind of rewire in terms of what you want to do, really, what the skills are that you've lost and how you want to repair them. So there aren't any real statistics as such. I think the stroke survivors that I speak to that have made a really good recovery will always say there's still something. Mainly that is around fatigue. People who have had a stroke can suffer with extreme fatigue, because the brain is overworking all the time, to create these new pathways and to work around the damage that's in the brain.
Thank you. Carry on, Marilyn.
Actually, that's a good point. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I have a massive interest in the brain. I teach accelerated learning and brain health because I was diagnosed with what was thought to be early onset Alzheimer's in my 20s. And this one is by Norman Doidge, Doidge. For people who like reading, it's called The Brain That Changes Itself, Stories of Personal Triumph from the Frontiers of Brain Science. Now, like you said about neuroplasticity, these frontiers have probably moved on a pace, because I've had this book a while now, so there might be an updated version. But the stories are absolutely incredible, because exactly like you said, the brain just goes, okay, that's not working, finds another pathway, and people do the most extraordinary things where theoretically, if you looked at their brain scan, they shouldn't be able to do those things. So it's a really fascinating read, based on what you were saying. So thank you for that reminder.
I want to say as well, this is going completely off piece, but I don't know if any of you saw the programme with Michael Mosley last night called Just One Thing. It was on BBC. I would recommend you watch it because it was about memory. Memory is an issue for stroke survivors, but can be an issue for people just generally as they get older. And it was all about the fact that just learning new skills as you get older keeps your brain active enough to keep it ticking on and to keep your memory intact. So I would recommend you watch it. Sorry, that was really off piste, but yeah.
No, a great suggestion. I'm going to go and look that one up.
Yeah, Just One Thing it was called. Bless him. Shame he's no longer with us, but yeah, it was a really good programme.
And we're going to go to Jenny, but I can see that Zora has reappeared. So Zora, is there something you wanted to add before you join the choir? And then we'll go to Jenny.
Yeah, well, just to say thank you very much, Tracy, for your presentation and your information. I've got to dash now, but I just wanted, when Clive asked the question in terms of how many individuals from the African Caribbean community are utilising the service, that for me was a huge worry when you admitted that there was hardly any individuals accessing the service, given our community are likely to be the highest sufferers. So in my concern was, as an organisation and certainly part of the government policy, what actions would be put into place to ensure that the necessary outreach is being done and that targets are being met to ensure members of our community are getting the full scope of support. The other thing, in terms of the outcomes of physiologically of the I won't say disease, but having a stroke, one would expect partnership working with occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and other therapists. Are your service accessing and working in partnership with these organisations? Because I'm not quite sure how the work can be done effectively without that level of support from those therapists. And I'm sure you're going to answer it, but I've really got to dash. So I can do it as I'm walking along, but
Hi, so
yeah.
Right, I'll explain what I can remember. And what the last point that you made about working with the NHS systems, which would be occupational therapists, physiotherapists, speech and language therapists, that kind of thing. So very much what the stroke pathway looks like is that you would usually go into acute care if you've had a stroke. You would then be discharged into rehabilitation hospitals or discharged to home. When you're discharged to home, you then have a number of those NHS health professionals who come in, the ones that we've just mentioned, and they will support your recovery for 6 weeks. And that's it. And it's after that 6-week period that you would then be expected to navigate your own way through the systems, if you like. Now, part of what I said at the beginning was part of my job, and our service teams and people that lead those teams as well, is to build those relationships with the NHS pathway. So we are working together. I will say it's usually a lot more effort on our behalf than it is on the NHS system's behalf, but we work at it tirelessly so that we make sure that those community teams and the acute care teams know about us, know what we're doing, and that they know that we are there to support them and stroke survivors on their journeys. Did that answer that one? And the previous one, I think, was around sort of calling to action, if you like, about the health inequality. We have a whole department in the Stroke Association that's working on that. But in terms of frontline, that's part of my job, is to create awareness, help a little bit with outreach, But sadly, we all of the engagement officers across the UK cover very big areas, and it's very hard to make a real difference in one particular place when we're sort of stretched in so many directions. Does that answer, Dora?
Yes, sorry, I'm just trying to find a little bit of light.
I know you are. I know you are.
Yes, that was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Have fun.
Wonderful. We'll go to Jenny next. Thank you so much for your patience. Jenny, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zora, for asking part of the question that I actually wanted to talk about and to say. It's about the fact that for the last couple of weeks, we've done loads of really sort of interesting, sort of engaging topics. I see stroke as one of them as well. Yet the number of people on this chat tonight is so much less. Why do you think it is that people from sort of the, African, Caribbean communities, etc., seem to think that it doesn't relate to them? Because to me, that's what it shows very, very much. Because if you say diabetes, and we had over 70 people listening, and I just find it really interesting that when you look at the risk factors, etc., diabetes is right up there. High blood pressure is right up there. And these are all things that so many African and Caribbean people actually suffer from. And it doesn't, that message that it could lead to stroke doesn't seem to be getting out there. You know, what can we do as an association to make, to get that message out there? Is there any funding that we can draw on to use, etc.? That was my question.
And I think and that is really key, and that's something that I'd obviously noticed from the numbers on the call as well. But it's not unusual. It's really not unusual, and I think it's a little bit about fear. I think because I think most people know that stroke is is the biggest cause of adult disability in the world, or in the UK. I can't say in the world, but in the UK. And I think that before I used to work in palliative care for a long time. Before I worked for stroke, I didn't really know very much about it. And I'm not sure that I really wanted to, because it was, for me, it was a fear of knowing too much, was scary, I guess. With diabetes and high blood pressure, I think people know that they can regulate it with the right treatment, and if it's monitored properly, it can be fine. But there's nothing that we can, even though we talk about risk factors, there's nothing we can say that in truth around people, those knowing those risk factors and doing something about it will prevent you from having a stroke. So I wonder if it is just, if I don't know, I won't think about it. It won't worry me. I don't know. What does anybody else think?
I think it could well be that, but I mean, it just seems so disappointing because, I know sort of within our community, and I'm Caribbean, that so many people actually die of stroke or become disabled due to a stroke. So diabetes, looking at the correlation, etc., you'd have thought that they would be much, much more sort of, I don't know. I find it frustrating. And that's why I've been sitting here, because I find it so frustrating. Heart disease is another thing. People don't seem to correlate that these things can actually lead to a stroke.
To bigger things. Yeah. I completely understand. I just, and I don't take offence by the numbers, I will say that. There's a really good amount of people on this call, and one of the things I asked you all to do is to share your knowledge, there's loads of resources on the website as well if you want, if you want to share that, if you want to learn more. There's also publications that you can order, things like how to reduce risk, and just all sorts of things that you can do, and the fast message as well. We can't. It's just that is quite key as well, and I just hopefully some of you, even if you all go away and you just explain all of this to one more person, it's a few more people that know. And I think Clive was saying that because we're recorded, that he will share the recording as well, which I'm delighted about, because if more people get the message, that's great.
Okay, one quick question, Trey. You said that you've got 5 people in Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
Are any of them Black or African? Just out of interest.
Just thinking. No, but we do have in Bedfordshire, we have a Caribbean lady in Bedfordshire. Just trying to think of the other services. No, that's it. None in Hertfordshire. None in Hertfordshire.
Thank you very much. It was just the things that I wanted to know for myself personally, because I
think that is a good point.
Yeah,
I think that is a good point. I don't know what that, in terms of recruitment, because I don't deal with that side of it. In terms of recruitment, what that looks like, how many people do apply, or not. But yeah, I do take your point on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Tracy. It's been really
interesting. We do find as well, I will say as well, we have somebody who works in engagement who's Asian, but we don't have very many Asian people that work in stroke frontline either.
Really interesting, because of the links.
Yeah,
it really is interesting. Yeah,
I agree.
Thank you, Tracy. I just needed
you're welcome,
for that.
Okay.
Wonderful. And perhaps next time there's a recruitment drive, let WACA know.
Yes.
That can be shared in there as well. Now, one of the questions from me, because you often hear people say interchangeably as though it's the same thing. What is the actual difference between a stroke and a heart attack? So if you could cover that, because I've heard people say, and I've some say, was it a stroke or a heart attack? And they're like, what? So if you could give a little bit of clarity, that would be fantastic on that one.
They are different. Some people refer to stroke as a brain attack. So that's where the heart attack, brain attack thing comes from, but they are completely different, and treated differently. Heart attack are a category 1 emergency when you ring through for ambulance support. Stroke is a category 2 because of the time scale that I talked about in the fast message. So even if you're needing to ring an ambulance for somebody and you're not sure, just say the word. The minute you've said the word, oh, it might be a stroke, that's it. It triages quite quickly, because of the timescale that people need to get interventions. But that's the only. There's no. I mean, obviously there are heart conditions that can lead to stroke, like we know, we talked about atrial fibrillation, like irregular heartbeat and things like that. So because the heart is the main organ obviously for pumping the blood around the body, and we know that a stroke is a blood flow related problem in the brain, then there is that connection. But you may have heard it more like a heart attack, brain attack, and that's how it's sometimes explained.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
And Clive has raised his hand again. So Clive, over to you.
I've got a question later, but very quickly. The reason for, and you've touched on this, Tracy, one of the reasons why we record these sessions is very much because it allows us to then spread that information to a wider audience. And hopefully we'll see this after tonight, as we have seen with the other things that we've done. Just one, can you also put in our chat the link to your website, because I think it might be helpful for us to share that and get that out there.
I can do. It is on. I'll just pop it in the chat now. It is on the website.
Yeah. In
I mean, it is on my slides, so it will come through on the recording.
So in disability circles, they have the saying that nothing about me without me. And I think, in fact, what people are saying is that actually we do need to begin to look at how we ensure that you're getting that demographic reflected in at you when you're engaged with these services, and that might well point to some of the reasons why you're not having that level of engagement. However, we are connected, and we'll seek to work. Yeah, we might change.
I will say as well, though, Clive, is that when we are given referrals from the NHS pathways, they do have to ask consent from the patient, and if the patient can't give consent, it has to be the families. And sometimes at that point, like just coming out of acute care or just having the end of community care, people sometimes don't know what they need or what they want, and that gets lost as well, because then that person doesn't necessarily agree to or consent to data sharing, and therefore we don't know about them. So there are lots of places on the pathway where that sharing of information can fall down. One of the things that we are doing at the moment across the whole of the east of England, and we're the only region at the moment who are doing it, is recruiting volunteers to actually go into acute care settings to talk about what we do. So that and we just hand over like one leaflet to the families. It's a really stressful time, it's a really traumatic time at that point in time, but if we can be saying to everybody who's had a stroke in that setting, look, here's our information, if you ever need us, we're here. That's how we're trying to combat that break of information sharing.
Okay, thank you. Just on this question, though, I think you probably answered, you implied answer to this question. Is there a support group in Watford? And if not, how would we go about setting one up if we wanted to do so? I know Jenny wants to come back in again, but I don't know if you have an answer to.
We don't.
Before you respond, just to say, I know we're scheduled to finish at 8, but I noticed that there's quite a few comments. Are you happy to answer the questions before we?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Do you want so there isn't one in Watford specifically. If you wanted to go about setting one up, we would support you to do that, in terms of finding a venue and referring into it. Now, what we would then do is join you into something called our Stroke Group Network. So it's basically almost an umbrella that kind of covers the top of you and holds your hand and supports you in that process. I do a lot of the work with you because it's my area, and we would just maintain a relationship. You would get lots of information coming out of the Stroke Association. The group would be on our website. So if people were searching for local groups, they'd find the group on our website, and they'd fill in a little form, and that's how that would refer into you in that way. We do lots of different activities, national activities during the year that you could join in with. We do online conferences for the whole of the UK, for groups to get together. More locally and regionally, we do face-to-face meetings and online meetings for groups to get together. So it's kind of it is just like a group network. We join everybody up a little bit and get them to support get you to support each other. So there is a kind of almost like a benefits package that we would give you to say how we would support you, and by setting something up.
Okay, thank you. Marlon, Jenny has got her hand up again. So, Jenny.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but I need to say this.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I need to say this. I actually yesterday had an angioplasty treatment in hospital.
Right.
Okay. And why that happened was because I went to my GP because I noticed that I kept getting out of breath. Now, I've always walked about 10,000 steps a day, and all of a sudden that changed. And I was referred by my GP straight to cardiology. And within 2-3 months, I've had this procedure done today. And what I noticed was that it says one of the things that this can lead to is stroke. And there's loads of information that I don't think anybody really knows.
No, and what you're talking about can be quite undetected, and it can be quite well. Firstly, I want to say well done, Jenny, going to the GP and getting this sorted out. That's amazing. But sometimes it's ignored, and it can be ignored for too long.
Yeah.
And in some cases, people just kind of brush everything under the carpet as old age as well. You know, I'm getting older. Breathless is okay. You know, or it, and it's. I've even been to settings in Asian cultures where people have actually had a stroke and not even accessed acute care.
Wow.
Which is, to me, blows my mind. And the only reason they've had a stroke is because I've gone along to that place of worship and I've talked to them about stroke. And we've managed to kind of talk to the family members enough to get them to realise that intervention is key or a second stroke is going to happen. So there are lots of scary pockets of stories that are out there. But yeah, that's a brilliant example, Jenny, and thank you for sharing that. And I hope that you're less breathless now.
I am definitely less breathless. But what I would say is that today I got 2 telephone calls from community care organisations around what my procedure that I had, and not one of them mentioned stroke. So there's something that's missing in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, there is, isn't there?
Yeah, there's got to be. And I think that this is what really needs to be changed, because people say, oh, so-and-so died of a heart attack. Maybe they didn't. Maybe it was just that they were a bit breathless, and because they brushed it off, they ended up collapsing and not getting the proper care. We don't know, but it's always worthwhile exploring a bit more.
Definitely. And that's a really good example for people as well as to why you should. Because you just little things can lead to big things.
Okay, Marilyn, do you want to take us through the rest? I can't see many more questions.
Yeah, so there's one more question from me, and it was, where do we find current information about COVID vaccine-induced stroke? And most importantly for me, it's what can people, if anything, what can people do to maybe mitigate the risk of that? It might just be they have to look out for the symptoms that you've gone through, or it could be there are things they could take, ingest, vitamins, minerals, I don't know, that could maybe potentially lessen the risk of that. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts. I did have a look on your website. I couldn't see anything, so maybe you can point us in the right direction.
And that's because there isn't anything. It's not something that I've got enough knowledge to speak about, but I can find out where you can find that information, Marilyn.
I could find a little bit on the States and the NIH site, but nothing haven't seen it much in the UK about it as yet.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that it's really been proven. It is one of those things that is floating around, I know, but I'm not sure where to find the evidence of it. But I will find out. I'll ask the question.
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. And I don't think we have any further questions. Got people saying it was very interesting. Thanking you for the session. I have put the link into the WACA Black History Month site. There's a calendar there. So all you have to do is click through the calendar and you'll see what's coming up next. And as we've already said a few times, the recording for this will go on to the WACA YouTube channel, but I don't think that there are any further questions. So Tracy, thank you so much. And Clive, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, Tracy, so just checking with you before we conclude, and I'll say a few words, but are there any sort of takeaways you'd like to leave after the session so far, Tracy, that you'd like to leave with us?
Definitely share this information. I think Jenny made some good points about, perhaps people just not wanting to access this information. Just make sure that we get it out there and we share it, and particularly the fast message that can make so much difference to people's outcomes from having a stroke. Do what you can to reduce the modifiable risks. And just try and make some changes, really. If you don't exercise, just try and do a little bit. And if you know that you can make some changes to your diet, just try and do that. And I think just take care of yourself and be kind to yourself. If you recognize changes, and you'll be the first person to recognize them, then do seek support and advice. Don't ignore, particularly you guys.
Okay, is that it? Thank you, Tracy. That's we were talking about whether or not this would have gone for the whole hour and a half, and it clearly has. And had we had more people here, I suspect we'd have an even longer session, and it's most interesting and enlightening for me. Clearly, there are a number of things that have been mentioned tonight that may well require us to come back to aspect of the subject. But as far as we're concerned, excellent contribution. Excellent contribution from our audience. It could just goes to show that always it's not a quantity that matters, it's a quality that matters, and we had all of that tonight. So thank everybody for being involved. And can I just say that we welcome your comments, and if you think that there are some things that we should be taken away from tonight and do something else with, including, for example, exploring the option to establish a support group, particularly if there's some resources around somewhere, then we'd like to hear that, because of course, those of you who know about the organization know that our reason for being is to look after the health and well-being of our community as much as we can. But of course, we don't have as much resources as we'd like, but to the extent that we have it and we can work with others, we want to kind of be seen to make a difference. A couple of other things to mention. In connection with that, I should mention that we also have a community needs assessment that's happening now. If you haven't taken the opportunity to complete that, then please do. It's on our website, and if colleagues can maybe just put a link to that there. Because we're trying to make sure that what we do is reflective of what your needs. There is also the fact that we've got some other elements of Black History Month still to go. We have our quiz night, which is on the 31st. So please put that in your diary, and it's online, it's free, always enjoyable. So engage with that if you can. I think Marilyn's already mentioned the walk and talk session on the 2nd of November. In the light of the conversation we've had tonight, I'm sure everybody here should be there with us in Castleberry Park on the 2nd of November. And the final thing is not about Black History Month any longer, but we have a gala event on the 16th of November. And it's an enjoyable event, but it's also about trying to raise some money for this organization. Because when we say we're doing things, people say, well, who's it for? We're a charity. We're a small charity. Actually, we get very little by way of public support, and we do these things all that we do because of the efforts of a small number of people and an excellent administrator that we have. But actually, we could do so much more with more resources. So we need people to come along and support that. There's some tickets still available, not many. So if you are interested, again, the information is on our website. So this is your organization. To end, I'd say remind people and tell you if you haven't heard it before, but our motto is together we can achieve. And I normally extend that by saying together we can achieve more. So I'm going to say thank you again, Tracy. Thank all of you this evening. Thank you, Zora, who's left us for kind of making the connections and getting this session organized. We're going to spread the word, and if we can all, when we receive this information, spread it as widely as possible. That would be much appreciated. Thank you all, and I think that's the end, unless there are any observations. I can't see any, so we're going to stop recording now.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tracy.